Hi, I'm Gina Wells,
Hi, I'm Kat Toon.
and this is the Success Principles Podcast. Michigan is known as the birthplace of Motown, headquarters to the auto industry, and home of the beautiful Great Lakes. The Success Principles Podcast features professionals and entrepreneurs with ties to this great state who have demonstrated innovation and success both within and outside of our Mittens border. Welcome, Vicki Beltz, to our podcast. Kat and I are so happy to have you on today. You know, Vicki, you and I met on an airplane as I was in Florida, headed to Birmingham, Alabama for a seminar for becoming your own banker. And if we sat on the same flight, we shared a ride, and we got talking about some of the things that you're doing and the success principles that you've had with your business, Security Beyond Wall Street. You teach a safe framework for people across the United States, including those here in the Mitten. So we'd like to welcome you to the podcast and just tell our viewers a little bit about how you got started and what it is that you can share with those about your background and what you can do for those here in the Mitten.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Gina and Kat. I'm really excited to be part of your show today. So I just want to take you back a few years to give you a sense of how I got to doing this today. And, you know, going back a few years, I just remember looking at my retirement statements at that time and thinking, man, this cannot be happening again. I felt like I was just throwing money away. And, you know, at the time, my retirement contributions were maxed out. But I was really wondering, is this all worth it? It struck me how my balances never seemed to reflect the stock market gains that we hear about on every channel in the good times. But when there's a drop in the market, somehow that gets fully reflected. And it was just so discouraging. I mean, it's hard enough to save for retirement already, what with trying to save for college, handling families, you know, my family's regular expenses. I really couldn't afford to lose any of the money I was saving. I needed it to grow. And instead, I just felt like I was falling behind. And that's kind of where I found myself several years back. I frequently thought, how am I ever going to get to enough for retirement? I'd always saved a good portion of my salary, done what I thought were all the right things. Yet I regularly found myself uncertain of the next move to make, and a lot of times just froze with indecision. So my money was just kind of hanging out in the wrong place, doing nothing for me.
And then in the meantime, Vicki, did you have other things going on like debt? And you said you had kids' college. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you were doing before you came to be what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I was in the insurance industry working in property casualty. I left that industry this past spring. I was a VP for a multinational carrier and started my career as an actuary. So I had well over a decade of that sort of work. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my background being math and personal finance, I always enjoyed that work and just kind of went up the ladder within the property and casualty industry there. And I do have two kids, and I was saving for college. I was fortunate enough to learn early on not to carry debt. So other than my mortgage, you know, that was in hand for me. But I'll say a lot of my close friends, a lot of my family, they do deal with that. So we do have frequent conversations about that. And I am divorced. So at the time, you know, I'm dealing with all of these kind of issues within my personal finances and that frustration. And at the same time, I'm also trying to plan my future with my new fiance from several years ago, trying to figure out how can I make sure that we take care of one another, but I also take care of my children from my former marriage. And that was an issue. So in discussing all of this one day, someone suggested to me, why not use life insurance? And that's kind of, I'd heard it a little here and there, but I also know that all of the gurus warn you against life insurance. So my immediate thought was, no, no, because that's the one thing we're all told not to use. And, you know, that's all we ever hear. And all we ever hear is to use only term. That's the only thing worth buying. But it was interesting to me because it's those same people that advise us to put our money in retirement plans. And by doing that, we put it at risk in the stock market, and it's going to be subject to future taxes. And at this point, I had not been at all satisfied with that approach. And so the first thing to address is the thought that many might have in their heads right now. I'm not here to try to sell life insurance. I don't have any company affiliation or anything like that. I'm really here to share with you the secret that very few in the financial industry seem to understand. Mm-hmm. It empowers you to safeguard your money from losses and create, as you guys are well aware, a very secure retirement that we're all after. And in digging into this, I knew that I didn't know what I didn't know about life insurance, but I decided I was going to figure it out. So I started researching. And again, my background as an actuary and my lifelong interest in math and personal finance came in really handy for this. Right. My first step was really to unlearn everything I'd been taught on the subject.
Isn't that something? Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's really the only way to move forward, is just unlearning all of these things that you think you know that you really don't know. After more than a year of research and interviewing several experts, and unfortunately some costly mistakes made along the way, the value of a properly structured policy became clear to me. So much so that I always knew when I left the corporate world, because that was always my plan, was to retire early from corporate. I always knew my second phase career as an entrepreneur would be teaching the subject of personal finance. But once I understood this tool, I knew that this was what I needed to share. I, found an answer to some common questions that I'd been asking myself for so long. Questions like, was there a way to grow your money and not put it at risk in the stock market? And, what if there was a way to make saving for your future easy and predictable, and a way to do that with tax advantages?
Mm-hmm. Vicki, so you mentioned that you were an actuary in the past. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what an actuary actually does? And then how did that play into your ability to kind of have that aha moment and grasp that what you were reading, that is really the best way to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. It is funny. It's a career that a lot of people have never heard of. Pretty much, I was probably a senior in high school before I even heard of it, and I'd always been a math person, but I'd always been encouraged to go into engineering. That's what you do with a math degree. So it's funny because when I graduated with my math degree and told people I was going to become an actuary, the almost unfailing response I got to that was, "Oh, that's nice. What's an actuary?" One woman actually asked me if I'd be working with birds. I think she was and I'm not making that up. So yeah, it's interesting. But actually it's a fantastic career. It's basically someone who works with, a lot of times it's with insurance companies. And there's definitely several different types of actuaries, but you're either going to be someone who determines how much the company needs to keep in reserves in order to be able to pay out future claims. So again, it's very numbers based, it's very mathematical. Or you're someone who works with pricing a company's products. And an insurance company's products are insurance policies. And what those are going to be is obviously you pay your premium and the company agrees to pay a benefit of some sort if a claim were to occur. So in the case of life insurance, that's going to be pay your premiums for the policy, and when a death occurs, assuming the contract is in force at that time, because term insurance does end, whole life insurance should continue, then the company needs to have enough money on hand to pay that claim. So the actuaries are figuring out how much premium it takes to purchase a certain amount of insurance. And they're also figuring out how much the company needs to keep on hand in order to pay out those claims that they're committed to paying.
That's great.
And
so go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me that having worked as an actuary, this wasn't something you had mentioned, that it was properly designed, that what you had discovered through your journey was how the right policy would be able to help you. Tell me a little bit about that, because you work for an insurance company. So what was your journey to discovering that?
All right. So if you bear with me a little bit, I'm going to backtrack a tiny bit there. I want to talk about kind of the base on which that's built and then speak to that proper structure that I mentioned. And, not knowing with your audience where they stand on understanding life insurance, I just want to back up a little bit from that. So I'll start by saying my nephew, he is a United States Marine.
Thank you for the service.
Recently suffered, yes. Very proud of him.
Yeah.
Recently suffered an injury to his knee, which resulted in the ligaments that hold his kneecap in place. They kind of were all torn. Mm-hmm. So he needed surgery. And thankfully, he came through that with flying colors. So we were all very happy about that. But it struck me that in post-op, his surgeon made it clear that he wanted the wound to remain covered and the bandages were not to be removed until the follow-up visit 2 weeks later. Before being released, the nurse brought my nephew the discharge papers, along with guidelines for ensuring there was no post-op infection. Other than running a fever, every single indicator of infection required removing the bandages to do a visual inspection. Mm-hmm. So those post-op instructions may have been suitable for all sorts of procedures. However, they've been generalized in an attempt to cover all procedures, even when they contradict the surgeon's instructions. So I share that because I view life insurance advice the same way.
Wow.
Some of the guidance might make sense in some situations, for sure. It's not to say one's good and one's bad, though that's what the prevailing wisdom would have us all believe. The product in general has been turned into a one-size-fits-all mantra in the daily financial dialogue, and I believe that's been to our detriment. Mm-hmm. So there are basically, as you both know, the two types of insurance, term and permanent. Each company pays a death benefit, in each of those, the company pays a death benefit in return for premium payments. For the term policies, the contract specifies the death benefit will be paid out only when the death occurs within a particular period of time. 10, 20, 30 years are typical. So when it expires at the end of the term, even if death follows by just a day, because the term has ended, no payout will be made. So an interesting fact is more than 98% of term policies never pay out, which shocked me when I saw that statistic. And it's no wonder that companies can keep premiums so low for term coverage. And that's where having some of my actuarial background that makes sense to me, because this is the likelihood of a lost payout is how a policy will be priced. Permanent policies, on the other hand, are permanent, and just as the name would imply. And the one type that I'm talking about here is a whole life policy, and that's going to be in place for a person's whole life. So in contrast to term, a whole life policy guarantees that at some point a death benefit will be paid. There's no question on whether a loss will occur. The only question is when. And if you were someone who played the lottery, and you could choose between, you're both smiling at that.
Yeah, well, you want to win the lottery.
So if you were, and you could choose between a ticket that had extremely low odds of ever paying you the jackpot versus another that was guaranteed to pay you at some point, think about how much more you might be willing to pay for that guaranteed lifetime winning ticket.
For sure.
Yeah, and that guaranteed payout is precisely what whole life insurance offers. And because of that, insurance companies are able to offer benefits to the owner during the lifetime of the policy prior to any death benefit being paid. And this is something that's just not available with term insurance. But again, those benefits are maximized so long as the policy is structured properly, and this is where I'll actually get to answering your question. Sorry, it's taken me so long to get there.
Right.
No, this is all great background.
Okay, great, excellent. I'm trying to give that background, so I'm glad you appreciate that. So, the key component to the proper structure is that the policy should offer what's called a paid-up additions rider, or a PUA for short. So this, to me, is the secret sauce, and through the PUA, what it allows you to do is you can pay additional premium into the policy. And as you know, that premium from the PUA goes directly to purchasing additional life insurance. By doing that, it increases both the cash value and the death benefit. So this is important because as a policy owner, you have access to the cash value. The result of adding the PUA rider is an ever-increasing accumulation of cash value that supports an ever-increasing death benefit.
Yeah.
And since this is done within the policy, there's no tax impact from the growth. The vast majority of whole life policies, the ones that we're all warned against, don't include this PUA rider. Again, this is why the generic guidance warns us against whole life policies as a means to build up cash value and to warehouse your savings, because typical policies without a PUA rider can take decades for the cash value to accumulate to any sort of meaningful level.
Yeah.
In fact, it's rare to see any cash value in the first 3 or so years of a basic life policy.
So the single premium paid up rider is added to the base contract of a whole life, right? And the bad news comes with the base contract, because those base contracts take forever to really build up any cash value. And then you add this rider and it gives it a little influx, and boom, you're on your way to doing many things you couldn't have done otherwise. So
absolutely, that's precisely the point. By adding that rider, you're able to stuff in extra premium and you begin to create that meaningful cash value immediately, and also at the same time reduce the expenses as a proportion of the total premium you're paying. And, it's because of that premium paid for the PUA rider, because it's not subject to the same expense and commissions built into the base policy. So that PUA rider is kind of the answer to the major criticisms by the financial gurus out there. And it's something we're not taught. And I just think that is such an incredible disservice to everyone, that we're not offered this structure of this sort of policy.
I know we offer it. You're teaching it. So let's talk about your course. How do people get to find where you are, Vicki, and how long is your course? And tell us a little bit about what you'll learn along the way.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you. So in addition to the course, I do want to stress that one of the key things to keep in mind is you need to work with the right practitioner, the right specialist to do this, because I'll share with you real quick, as I was looking into this and studying this, one of the keys is setting it up with a mutual company, because those are the companies that are going to pay you as a policyholder and therefore owner of the company. They're going to pay you dividends, which goes to purchasing more paid up additions and just kind of supercharges the process.
Right.
When I was looking into this, reached out to 4 local mutual company representatives, different companies. They showed up at my door looking dumbfounded, because they couldn't believe someone called them to come to their home to talk to them about life insurance, right? That was a little bit odd for them, I guess. But I wanted one of these policies. So they came in, one at a time, sat down. I told them what I was looking for. All but one of them just stared at me blankly. They had no clue what I was talking about. And it's just something that I hope people are aware of. And again, one of the reasons I'm putting this out there and trying to teach people about this is because not only is it the financial advisors that are unfamiliar with, don't know about, haven't been educated on this particular structure and how to use it to really supercharge your retirement, but a lot of life insurance agents, either their company doesn't offer it, so they don't speak about it, or maybe they never learned it. There is some element of they're paid a lot less to sell these policies, so you don't know how that might play in. But the fact is, a lot of them out there don't know how to do this or don't offer it outright. So that's something key, and that's something that we go through in the course too, is how to find the right specialist to work with, how to find the right person, what you're looking for in the policy. So, when implemented correctly, it adding one of these structured policies to your retirement plan can create a larger and far more secure nest egg, and it also provides you access to the cash value as you're building it. So, to your question, one of the most common questions I get when discussing this option with people is, Vicki, can you help me learn how to make saving for my retirement more secure and a little more predictable? And the answer is yes. And what I do through my Lifelong Asset Academy It's a group coaching program that will show you just how to do this. And the course is perfect if you're the sort of person who wants to have a handle on what they're investing in. You don't just want to be told this is good for you, but you want to really understand exactly why that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And with the group coaching program, we'll learn, why we should all consider adding a properly structured whole life insurance policy to our portfolio. You'll learn the tool to help maximize your retirement income. And we learn that by walking through what I call my SAFE framework. And that's where we're going to really dig into the structure that you need in one of these policies and what to look for when you ultimately do work with a specialist who is familiar and trained and proficient in this approach. We talk about and we understand the asset power and really dig into that. So SAFE, we also talk about funding, different ways to fund a policy. A lot of people think, oh, I can't get a life insurance policy, I'm too old, or my health isn't great, or whatever. We talk about the fact that if you're uninsurable for some reason, maybe there's a child, maybe there's a spouse, maybe there's a business partner, there may be other people in your life that you've got what's considered an insurable interest, and you could own a policy on them and still, as the owner, get all of the benefits from owning the policy. And a lot of those benefits, too, we go through in the course and how you can ultimately enjoy. One of the things that really strikes me as far as how to fully enjoy what you've built with this asset.
Right.
I was just talking the other day to somebody, and she was talking about the fact that she's actually in retirement right now. And she's going through RMDs, the required minimum distributions from her IRAs. And she's, basically she's done very well for herself. And she's sitting there going, but I don't need this money. I don't want to take this money out. I don't. And one of the things this allows is for you to actually use or spend your money. A lot of people are so worried, rightfully so, about outliving their savings in their retirement accounts that they don't use them for a long time until they absolutely must. And, comes to find out they could have been using them more all along. And this kind of gives you almost a backstop for that so that you can actually use what you've built and enjoy your life, enjoy your family, enjoy travel, whatever you'd like to do.
Right. And actually probably recapture a little bit of that tax that you had to pay to get into that account, right? Because it comes back tax-free as a death benefit. So
Absolutely.
That's great
Absolutely.
that you're sharing that knowledge with people, Vicki.
Yeah, Vicki, you had mentioned about people having to unlearn a lot of, you in particular had to unlearn a lot of things that you had heard, and I'm assuming, just sound bites from different financial gurus or news and media and stuff like that. Through your course, what have you found is one or two of some of the biggest things that people have to unlearn?
It's probably, I would say the immediate answer to that is deciding the course is worth it in the first place, because we are all, how many times have you heard buy term, invest the difference?
Yeah.
Buy term, invest. That is what we're all taught from the time we can remember.
Mm-hmm.
When we cared about finance or insurance. That's what we hear. And it's really a matter of being curious enough, like knowing that you want to learn something new. Maybe you have money sitting on the sidelines, you're worried about the stock market, or you don't invest, so you don't know what to do with it. So it's just sitting there doing nothing for you. Or, maybe you're in the market, but you're kind of worried about the exposure you have to it, and you're just kind of looking for something else to diversify a bit. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the situation I found myself in, and I'm so glad I did. But, people don't consider this an option because we're all warned against it. So really that unlearning is just to say, which is what I did, was, okay, let me learn a little more about this. It's worth investing in myself to learn a little more about this. And that's really what my course tries to help people to do. So that's the piece I would say is the biggest unlearning. Mm-hmm. And then soon we will be opening up our Lifelong Asset Academy group coaching again. But in the meantime, for those interested in learning more, all you need to do is contact me through my website. You can find that at www.mylifelongasset.com. And from there, we can schedule a discovery call to ensure we map out the next steps that are appropriate for you.
Yeah.
And again, whether you're not even focused on investments and just want to start saving for retirement by, recapturing some of the income that today is flowing to others, or, whether you don't have the first idea about building a portfolio and just don't want to deal with the fluctuations of the market, or whether you're a knowledgeable investor looking to maximize your future assets without taking on more risk, the group coaching will give you the information that you need to pursue to determine for yourself if it's a fit. And if so, that you know how to pursue what really is a lifelong asset.
Right. One of the things that, in listening to you, Vicki, I always call it soundbite financial planning. We listen to a 30-second commercial. We listen to something that pops up on our screen, and we go, oh, I want to get that. That sounds like the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. And the realization of what I'm hearing from you is you have to, like all of us, right, learn how something works, learn how it works in your life, and then bring it to the forefront to benefit you. Not everything can be a cookie cutter approach for everybody because we all have a different life to lead. So it's great that you're coaching people on that level, just like we go for a fitness coach or, or a business coach or whatever. Financial coach is great. And also an academy to learn from the ground up is wonderful. Vicki, it's a great job what you're doing.
Yeah, I love what you're doing. I always say we never had a personal finance class in high school, and this is not something that's taught at any level in your life. There's this information that you have to go and seek out yourself. So thank you for making it easier to seek knowledge on things that aren't, I always say it's not sexy. This is not sexy stuff we're talking about here, but it's important, very important. So
absolutely.
I absolutely commend you for what you're doing. Thank you very much.
And what's great too is we all live in this virtual world now. We're having this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Kat and I'm in my office. Kat's in her office home. You're at your office home. And everybody seems to be working from home and kind of getting used to that. But at the same time, if we take just 30 minutes a day, and I'm not sure how long your courses last, can you give us a little idea of how many people you have in a course? How long do they last? Can you do record it and go back and look if you missed it, that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah, I can absolutely share that. So the way the course is structured right now is we start with a one-on-one conversation just to understand for each individual, since it is finances and sometimes it's a little personal, you don't necessarily want to disclose that in a whole big group or whatever, but just to understand where people currently are, what their retirement dreams are, where they want to try to get to, what large expenses they might have coming up that maybe they're saving for today, and for encouraging people to get a handle on and an accounting of all of their current assets. Because, Kat, as you pointed out just a moment ago, so many people are kind of, finance isn't the thing that's on the top of mind for a lot of people. And a lot of people just kind of set it on automatic and forget about it, maybe not even checking in on it every now and then. It's important to understand our financial, where we are financially. And, think of it as money instead of finance if you want. Well, however you want to think about it so it doesn't freak you out, it's just take that control back and understand where you are. So that's kind of what our first call really focuses on, and that's a one-on-one call. Following that, we go into 4 weeks of group coaching. And right now it's set up as a 90-minute session once a week. And each of those sessions is individually recorded. And those recordings are provided to the group so that if the time doesn't work or whatever, you can kind of watch it on your own time. And like you mentioned, Gina, maybe 30 minutes a day is what you want to do instead of sitting down and taking it all in one chunk. And we also have Q&A, which if you missed the live session, you can certainly submit that to me separately and we'll address that in a future session. But it's in those 4 weekly group coaching sessions that we really walk through that SAFE framework that I referenced earlier. What I do after that is we have an individualized, again, one-on-one call that you set up on your schedule. And with that, we just address any questions that might remain, talk about, what the individual's situation is, and is there somebody in their life if they feel they may not be insurable, is there another plan they could maybe, think about, so that when they reach out to a specialist, and we'll, provide those resources as well, when they reach out, they kind of know exactly what they're looking for and where to start that conversation. And in doing that, again, we highly encourage them to work with the specialist that we recommend, but they might have a financial person already and go talk to them. I want people to understand when the person they're talking to doesn't have any idea how to do this. And by learning this, they'll be able to say, this might not be the person to work with on this product. So I've actually had one of the individuals from my course already have that experience. So yeah, I think that's really important for people to feel empowered enough to know when to search elsewhere if they're not getting what they should be getting. And then the other thing I offer kind of on the back end is, a lot of people might not be comfortable with doing this on their own. So I do offer what I call a 911 call, which is, at this point in working with a specialist, you all are going to explain it all to them and let them know how it works, but they might just want another set of eyes on it. So that's something they could bring back to me, and, I could help walk them through, especially in terms of what we learned in the class, and kind of point things out to them. Because a lot of times people may see numbers and kind of get freaked out a little bit. So that kind of helps them walk through it. So yeah.
It can be emotional for a lot of people. That's true. So you help them with the emotion. Money is different to everybody, right? Some love it and some hate. I mean, we all want it, right? We all want to be sure that we can live the life that we want to live. But,
at the end of the day, it's all about freedom to be able to do that.
Vicki, you are an educator. You're purely out there just to educate people, correct? You have no specific thing that you're selling. You have no stake in any of these products. And I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah.
Just to know that there's, no hidden agenda, right? Or no ulterior motives other than to get the message out.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. That's absolutely right. Again, going back to my earliest days, like, I've always been passionate about personal finance, and it's always been so clear how many people are not. So, and as I can't remember who pointed it out earlier, but we don't learn about this in high school. We don't learn about this in college. And yet it's all on us to figure it out, to make sure we've got enough to last our lifetime. And that's just, it's a huge burden, but we're also not given the tools to deal with that burden. So I always knew that I would want to do some sort of financial education for people. And again, finding this tool, it's been around for a long time. Somehow people don't know about it. And I remember going back a few years when I learned about this, and I really began to truly appreciate what this could offer. I was literally angry that I had never learned about this. I mean, so it's that passion, I guess would be the word for it, that is encouraging me.
Yeah.
People need to know.
That's great. Well, Vicki, we have enjoyed having you on our podcast, Success Principles, and we hope that a lot of people reach out to you just to learn about that, because it's so important, even if it takes us at age 55, 65 or whatever, just to know there are some options that you can do that aren't risky to your money.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening to our show. We know your time is valuable, and we appreciate that you have taken the time to stop by for a bit.
For more information about the topics we discussed today, there are links in the show notes for your reference. If you'd like to learn more about the Success Principles podcast and about Kat and myself, go to www.successprinciplespodcast.com. Gina Wells is an investment advisor representative of Retirement Wealth Advisors Incorporated, an SEC registered advisor. Success Principles Podcast and RWA are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. This information should not be considered tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with professionals specialized in fields of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of the information for their situation. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments will fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than originally invested.